Hello, friends, and welcome to the show. On this episode, I'll be discussing Twitter's new moderation idea and how it's the best thing since sliced bread, unless you're a parlor, and which it was the most ridiculous, dumbest, stupidest idea ever and got them kicked off of Apple and Google App Stores because it was just not good enough. Next, I'll be talking about the drop in US coronavirus cases and how Jeff Bezos has suddenly become not a fan of mail in voting now that it affects his pocketbook. But before I get started, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you'd like to contribute to the show, please go to notcensoredyet.com/donate and you'll find links where you can donate to the show and it'll help us produce more consistent quality content free from outside influence. So let's get started. Jack Murphy retweeted a post from Jack Posobiec, I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it. Promises of human moderation weren't enough to keep Parler on Apple and Google app stores. Yet here's Twitter promising to do the very same thing. Jack Posobiec says, notice who is promoting the launch of this and already seeding the pretext that criticism of censorship is violence. That's important to note, friends. New and potentially cool. Twitter is launching Birdwatch, a Wikipedia-ish moderation forum to combat misinformation. I have some concerns about the safety of contributors, but it's got promise. Why would you have concern about the safety of contributors? If they're just even-handedly moderating content, I don't see where there would be an issue. And I don't see an issue with them being anonymous either. Why should their names have to be exposed to the interwebs? But my issue is when Parler recommended to do the same thing because they wanted basically a jury of your peers to determine whether your content was good or bad. Because guess what? An AI can't read into tone, it can't read into context. And so it takes nuance and it believes that it should be the people not wanting you to talk as opposed to some algorithm. And then you have to prove yourself innocent and you have to get queued and you might have to wait days or weeks for them to finally get to you. So they'll flag it, take your post down, and then they'll look it over. But that wasn't good enough for Google or Apple. But this is apparently really cool now because Twitter's doing it. But just like when Parler was supposedly having violent posts on there, that wasn't good enough when they pulled it down. But when Twitter was spreading and profiting off of illegal content, purely illegal content, they are still on all the app stores, fully monetized. They're still hosted by AWS, all of this stuff. It's bananas. So we'll see where that comes from. My only concern is as Twitter is purging the populists on both the right and the left, the only people left to moderate the content will be the establishment types. So if Biden says, hey, we're going to be increasing our troop presence in Iraq, and then you have somebody say, man, that's just going to further this endless war. It's going to be fact check false because it is not an endless war. We've only been in war for 20 years, friends. How is that endless? It's only been 20 years. Endless would imply that it's been going on for hundreds or thousands of years. It's only been going on for 20. It's only been going on for longer than a lot of these kids going over there have been alive, which is bananas if you think about it. Let's see what the Hill is talking about. Drop in US coronavirus cases, likely not due to vaccine at this time, Fauci says. Anthony Fauci told NBC's Today Show that the recent drop in cases and hospitalizations is likely due to a natural plateauing of infections followed by the holiday season surge, which makes a lot of sense. The new year the new year occurred about 3 weeks ago. You know, most people stay wherever they travel to for a couple days and then they travel back. I know my family, we usually stay until the 3rd or the 4th and then we fly back unless we're in a rush or something. So the numbers play out and it does make a lot of sense. If you kind of just look at a calendar and go, okay, well, that makes sense because people tend to travel at this time, so I understand where they're coming from. He urged people not to become complacent when it comes to public health measures to stop the spread of the virus. So basically saying, wear your mask in public, friends. The 7-day average for daily new cases is more than 167,000 and more than 110,000 people are currently hospitalized with COVID-19. So a couple of things they failed to mention. The World Health Organization has requested for the PCR test to be less sensitive, meaning that there will be less positive test results, which would imply a drop in U.S. coronavirus cases because you're getting less false positives. Things that would have been falsely positive are now probably not showing up as a false positive test. It's just being negative. So that's important to keep in mind. What's also important to keep in mind are these xenophobic, fear-mongering policies. I feel like Peter Doocy does a better job asking this question. And here's the response from the press secretary.
When President Trump was imposing travel restrictions in March, specifically on China, then candidate Biden called it xenophobic and fear-mongering. So now President Biden is putting travel restrictions on people coming in from other countries. What word do we use to describe that?
Well, I don't think that's quite a fair articulation. The president has been clear that he felt the Muslim ban.
So when did Mr. Ducey ever talk about the Muslim ban? He was talking about coronavirus travel restrictions. This is just a deflection.
Was xenophobic. He overturned the Muslim ban. He also, though, has supported, and he himself, even before, or we did, I should say, even before he was inaugurated, steps, travel restrictions in order to keep the American people safe, to ensure that we are getting the pandemic under control. That's been part of his policy. But he was critical of the former president for having a policy that was not more comprehensive than travel restrictions. And he conveyed at the time, and more recently, the importance of having a multifaceted approach, mask wearing, vaccine distribution, funding in order to get 100 million shots in the arms of Americans in the first 100
years.
So she really doesn't answer the question. So basically he's like, so if it's xenophobic and fear-mongering when Trump does it, what do you call it when Biden does the same exact thing? Which is a valid question. So is Biden a fellow xenophobic fearmonger, or is he doing the responsible thing? And if Joe Biden is doing the responsible thing, then now can he say that Trump was doing the responsible thing? Should he take back the slanderous, libelous things that he was saying about the former president? So we need to keep everything equal. Tensions are still high. The country is very divided, but these questions need to be asked. People need to be exposed for their hypocrisy, because this is definitely an issue, because you can't just hold one person to a 100% lockstep standard where everything needs to be buttoned up and perfect, and the other person can get away with whatever they want. There's no fact checking, because we're just going to assume that everything he says is true, as opposed to actually doing our job and looking into what they're saying. So let's look into Jeff Bezos. Amazon, owned by Washington Post owner Jeff Bezos, slams mail-in voting on unionization vote. So I'm using the Daily Wire because the Wall Street Journal piece that it's sourced from is behind a paywall, and this article is free. So there you have it. This one's not editorialized. It's actually written super neutral, so I'm okay with talking about it. Amazon, which is owned by Jeff Bezos, who also owns the Washington Post, is trying to block mail-in voting for a unionization vote at an Alabama warehouse. So I think the reason, so slight editorialization there, I think the reason why they pushed that is because the Washington Post basically was saying, hey, mail-in voting is such a good thing. There is nothing wrong with mail-in voting. If you have a problem with mail-in voting, then you're a conspiracy theorist, blah, blah, blah. So now the owner has pivoted because now it's affecting him personally. Amazon has filed an appeal challenging the decision by the National Labor Relations Board, which is permitting a mail-in vote due to the risk of contracting COVID-19 from in-person voting, the Wall Street Journal reported on Friday. The ballots are set to be mailed to about 6,000 workers associated with its Bessemer, Alabama facility on February 8th. In its petition, Amazon said the board's decision was flawed in part because it had not adequately defined an outbreak, among other objections, the Journal noted, adding, hourly Amazon workers have never previously formed or joined a union in the U.S. The NLRB said last week that the approximately 6,000 employees at Amazon's Bessemer, Alabama facility would cast a vote by mail, noting that the health risks from the pandemic, as they stated, a mail-in ballot election will enfranchise employees who cannot enter the voting location for health reasons or due to positive COVID tests. In addition, a mail ballot election will protect the health and safety of voters, agency personnel, the party's representatives, and the public during the current health crisis, CNN reported on Friday. Amazon complained that NLRB Acting Regional Director Lisa Henderson reached the remarkable conclusion that any level of infection or potential infection amongst employees counts as an outbreak. Amazon claimed that the Bessemer facility had 218 of the 7,500 employees and third-party workers tested positive in the 2 weeks concluding January 7th, and thus that number did not justify canceling in-person voting. Amazon stated, if true, facilities will be in a constant state of outbreak unless and until the virus all but disappears, with no manual elections occurring until that unknown time, adding that a mail election could disenfranchise dozens or hundreds of voters. Oh my goodness, it sounds like that argument has been made by other people before. Just recently, I'm old enough to remember when that argument was being made. Contacted by the Journal, Amazon would only say that in-person voting was best because it provided the NLRB with a safe, confidential, and convenient proposal for associates to vote on-site, which is in the best interest of all parties, associate convenience, vote fidelity, and timeliness of vote count. Amazon, which boasts 800,000 employees, making the second largest employer in the United States, is also fighting the unionization vote with a website called doitwithoutdues.com, which argues, hey, BHM1 doers, why pay almost $500 in dues? We've got you covered with high wages, healthcare, vision, dental benefits, as well as safety committee and an appeals process. There's so much more you can do for your career and your family without paying dues. Bamazo Union explains that a union at Amazon would give us the right to collectively bargain over our working conditions, including items such as safety standards, training, breaks, pay, benefits, and other important issues that would make our workplace better. So this is hilarious. It's just funny seeing it that now when it affects liberal big business, a liberal owned corporation that profited so much from the COVID pandemic, the same reason that they're asking for the mail-in ballots, the same thing that his newspaper was advocating for, calling that anybody opposed to it, a conspiracy theorist, they're pushing misinformation, whatever you would want to call it, is now saying, well, hey, it's not good when it affects me personally. So the hypocrisy is strong with this one. Just like all these other politicians in the past, all these Democrat politicians, Obama and other people of the like, who said the mass mail-in voting is not good when they believed that it would negatively affect them. I'm just going to touch on this one thing real quick. It's kind of breaking news from Will Chamberlain. He was listening to the National Guard briefing. There are still 13,000 National Guards in D.C. conducting security missions, according to the brass. This is decreasing down to only 7,000 by the end of this week. So from my understanding, they want to keep 7,000 troops in D.C. until the end of Trump's impeachment. Why? I was told that there was going to be a protest at the Capitol during the inauguration. And guess what happened? Nothing. You know where there was protests? Portland. And you know what happened? Biden's Gestapo shot tear gas at Antifa. Press is asking about how many guardsmen had COVID. No questions yet about why on earth they were all stuck in a parking garage with access to only a single bathroom. Finally, a foreign correspondent asks about the National Guard in the parking garage. Head of the DC National Guard said, every guardsman has a hotel. They weren't sleeping there. They were just taking a break. Neither member of the brass explained how that happened. I'll tell you how that happened. The DC Capitol Police, who said, you need to get out of this building, reports to the Senate Majority Leader, the Speaker of the House, and the President of the United States. The Capitol Police reports to the executive and the legislative branch, which are both headed by Democrats. So it was a Democrat that made that order and a Democrat that basically told the DC police to get those people, get the rabble out of our sights. We are tired of looking at those stinky people sitting in our lobby. Now a journalist is saying, you're not supposed to talk against your employer, and is asking for an investigation into the troops that leaked that they were in the parking garage. And he kind of editorializes, enemy of the people. And that's true. Because guess what? If the troops didn't speak up, nobody would have known of the incompetence and the utter disdain of the Democrat leaderships that the Democrat leadership has towards the military. Joe Biden likes to take credit for his son's military service, while he did more than Trump to avoid military service of his own. He received one more college waiver than Trump did, and he also received a medical exemption for asthma while he was a football player, I believe, in high school. But then when it came to joining the Army, he was unfit because he had the asthmas. Head of DC National Guard sounds annoyed by this whole thing, suggesting that the guardsmen should have gone up the chain of command while they were stuck in a parking garage with one bathroom and one power outlet for 5,000 people. You know what? I would do both. I would go up the chain of command, but sometimes the chain of command is slow. Sometimes they say, suck it up, buttercup. But my problem is, you have 5,000 people sharing a bathroom during a pandemic. The Democrats say, the pandemic is the worst thing ever, and then a Democrat banishes you to a place where 5,000 people have to share a bathroom. So it does not seem like it makes a lot of sense. So guess what? If there's press there asking questions and they say, what are you doing here? Be like, I don't know. The Capitol Police kicked us out, and then we're stuck here. We're all crammed on top. We're all sitting on top of each other, and there's only one bathroom. They're feeding me nothing but pizza. Where am I supposed to poop? Like I said, poetic justice. If it's legal for public defecation in Washington, D.C., like it is in San Francisco, not telling you what to do, but I think it would be hilarious if someone did some justice or some equivalence of what happened in Nancy Pelosi's driveway in Washington, D.C. 30-minute press briefing, and it's still not clear why 5,000 National Guardsmen were put in a parking garage. Embarrassing. Well, I kind of told you why. But I'm not speaking from a place of authority. I'm speaking from a place of pure speculation, but an informed speculation at that. So if you understand the makeup of the Capitol Police, who they report to, the orders had to come from somewhere. So if somebody ordered them to clear them out, the only people who would give them the orders would be the leadership of the legislative or the executive branch, which both happen to be led by Democrats. So a Democrat gave that order. It's now just figuring out which Democrat gave that order. So it's only a matter of time before we figure that out. So that's going to be it for today, folks. I'll be working on more videos. I'll see you all tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye.